So Azeroth is definitely awakening soon, and very likely something void-based, seeing that we're getting a giant invasion in Midnight. The real question though is exactly what happens to us when that happens. Is Azeroth just going to break away in a giant cataclysm, we get wiped out and this leads to WoW 2? Or will the World Soul just simply be removed as like an avatar, we get rid of what is essentially a target for every force out there, and Azeroth finally experiences peace. New lore confirms Azeroth is a neutral prime world soul that others are trying to convert, but what if Azeroth awakens in its own way? What will it turn into? With the War Within out, the best way to optimize your game is with the Trade Skill Master add-on. It's for everyone, whether you just want to make gold or you're flipping millions. It can help you manage your auctions, post items in bulk, find the best deals. It can help your professions by helping you see what's the most profitable thing to craft. Best of all, TSM now has a new premium package that can put you on a whole nother level with a vast database that will help you make informed decisions on what to buy and when to sell. So make sure to click the link in the description and get 15% off your first purchase of Premium TSM package. Alright, so we've been talking about Azeroth awakening pretty much since the time of the Legion, and Blizzard has hinted throughout the years that Azeroth is very close to awakening, like it can happen any moment. However, now we're actually in this process and it is about as good as confirmed that the time for this is nigh. The reason I'm saying this is because of the prophecy that was introduced in Dragonflight that might as well have really been an official announcement of the expansion, because everything it predicted happened like to the letter. This is an Naga document talking about Ashara returning and everything else that happened. Children of the First Flesh gathered by Xal'atath, this is the Nerubians. The torches have been lit, this is the Dragonflight storyline. Primal Power and the End of Order, this is Ridicron. Hunger Lost to the Ages, this is Galakrond. The only confusing part is the Dark Heart left broken, awaits the taking. This could be referring to the fact that the Dark Heart was just chilling in Deathwing's secret lab, open for the taking for Xal'atath, but I feel like it might also be referring to the most recent cinematic with Khadgar that happened at the end of 11.0. This is specifically because it happens after reclaiming the essence of Galakrond in the prophecy document. Recently, as we had all seen, Alleria shot at the Dark Heart and in a way broke it, which pissed Xal'atath off and freed Khadgar. Because this was literally written in the document, I feel like Xal'atath knew that this would actually happen. For a Giga 200 IQ brain villain like she is, it seems really dumb that she wouldn't expect that, we could just shoot an arrow at the artifact, and she totally didn't see Khadgar hiding inside the artifact. It could have really all been a part of her deception. However, the most relevant part is what happens after. Essentially, two things will happen soon. Ashara will return to rule over the sea, sky, and earth, and the Harbinger will fulfill the final prophecy and complete the awakening. Here, we're definitely talking about Azeroth and the World Soul. Seeing that we know in Midnight the invasion happens and the Void succeeds, it isn't too hard to predict what is going on. Now, Azeroth Awakening isn't exactly new lore. We've known about this event for over a decade. Until recently, the Titans have been BSing us that she's a Titan that is being nurtured, that they're going to awaken. The most recent quest vision in the War Within finally confirmed this officially, and when combined with the new Chronicle book that came out a few months ago, it's no longer really speculation territory. Azeroth is a neutral elemental force, the so-called Prime World Soul, that can be converted into whatever force consumes it. It can awaken, as far as we know, as any cosmological force. All the facilities and the craziness that we have seen over the years just kinda shows us that everyone has been competing for Azeroth. First, the native elementals were around and the Black Empire arrived to convert it into the Void monstrosity. Then the Titans essentially replaced this empire with their own. The only difference was that they wrote the history that we know, so until recently we saw them as the saviors of Azeroth, but I'm guessing in the eyes of the World Soul of Azeroth, they're exactly the same. It's almost certain that all these Titan facilities all over Azeroth have just been mechanisms to convert the World Soul, and there is a big, still relevant theory that Azeroth is inside of a Titan prison based on the comparison of the logo. Now, all this is really old information, you probably already know this, I've talked about this a million times, but the real question is, since the awakening is imminent, very likely towards the Void side, what exactly is going to happen to our planet and to us? I mean, sure, Azeroth awakens, but what about us living there? Like, is Azeroth literally just going to emerge from the core of the planet and take us all out? Or would nothing ultimately change? could this be a setup for WoW 2? So to not just mindlessly speculate, we do have a few reference points we can look at. One of the old interviews from nearly a decade ago talked about Azeroth, that it will eventually awaken, but it was more of a storyline like all of us, like we're all Azeroth, we're all the energy of the planet, we're built from this energy. I'm not sure how accurate that really is at the moment, because obviously what is currently going on has definitely shifted over the years. I don't think Blizzard really planned all this all along. So the other point we can look at is the other world souls and what we know happened there. Azeroth isn't the only world soul in the universe. The only difference is that Azeroth is a prime world soul, aka the most powerful one that we know. So one of the more murky known stories was of the planet Sargeras destroyed, and I feel like there is so much more to this story than we were originally told, as it is one of the reasons for the Sargeras Pantheon split. Essentially, Sargeras discovered that the awakening process had happened and he realized he can't do anything, so he just destroyed the planet. Some hints show us that this could potentially be Telegra's Rift, where the Void Elves are based, as this is like a small part of what remains of the ancient planet. Now this isn't exactly the best comparison, because as far as we know, Sargeras killed the Void, awakened the World Soul, and also killed the planet at the same time as well, so it would really be equivalent of Azeroth just being split by Sargeras back at Legion. The other, more recent story is of Kaladesh. That was like soft confirmed in the War Within to have had a World Soul as well, and it gave the same radiant song that Azeroth is currently doing. This is the homeworld of the Ethereals destroyed by Demacius. It's also possible Xal'atath was involved as well. Here, we don't really know what happened. We know the planet was blown apart, but it's very likely that this void monstrosity was actually raised, and we are yet to see him, like he's wandering the universe somewhere. Now, the only other world soul that we know that we have a lot more info on, and this is Argus, and it is essentially kind of a look into the future of what can really happen when these cosmological crazies go unchecked. Let's take the current new lore into account and look at the known lore from Legion with new eyes, and you can actually see a lot of parallels. So Argus was almost certainly not a Titan, as we were previously told. It was definitely like Azeroth, a neutral source of energy. The difference was that we were told that Azeroth is much more powerful than Argus. Argus, however, was plucked by everyone who came along, which kind of shows you that these big guys definitely enslaved planets and used them for their own goals. First, Sargeras used the energy as a giant engine to revive his demonic army 24/7. However, when the Titans returned, they essentially brought Argus as a Titan avatar that we defeated, but keep in mind, this was beyond a weakened form, and then they used the remnant of the power to imprison a giant being like Sargeras. This kind of shows you how powerful these world souls actually are, even when they're almost completely drained, and keep in mind, Argus is nothing compared to Azeroth. However, later in the Shadowlands, we also learned that the Netrazim had been corrupting Azeroth with that energy, and they tried to turn him into an Eternal One, and later his soul was used to destroy the Machine of Death, which caused the entire Shadowlands thing. So as far as we know, it was the Fel thing, then a Titan thing, then a Death thing. At least 3 cosmological forces got their hands on the World Soul of Argus. Now, a big thing happened though. The World Soul was destroyed, but the planet remained. This awakening didn't cause Argus to split, but I'm not once again sure how good of a comparison this really is, seeing that the planet was already drained and tortured and essentially destroyed beyond repair. The little energy that remained was brought as a Titan avatar by the Pantheon. Now, the difference is with Azeroth, I mean, our planet is definitely infested by all these guys, but it is actually in great shape and the energy is much more powerful. This means that the awakening process will be a lot more potent. However, the current lore does show us that this world soul inside of the planet awakens as an avatar, not really breaking the planet apart. So while there's certainly a theory that we could get a whole wipeout of the planet and this is the setting for WoW 2 and we get a brand new planet and universe, I just don't think this is really too realistic. I think the much more likely scenario is that Azeroth will awaken as an avatar and the planet will probably get some sort of an effect similar to the Cataclysm or the Azerite craziness we got, but very likely it won't be some earth-shattering thing where we all just get wiped out. Now, here's the thing. Chris Metzen, he told us that they're setting up the next 20 years of WoW, so whether we get WoW 2 or WoW continues as is, this definitely won't be the end of Azeroth, and it's almost certain by now that the Last Titan is not the end of the entire franchise. However, the name World Soul Saga implies a whole lot of things. Most importantly, the lore progression and everything we were told implies that the awakening of Azeroth is certain and that we will deal with the World Soul once and for all. Technically, all of Warcraft thus far has been based on the World Soul. That is why the Legion invaded us, the Orcish invasion, why the Void is after us. That is pretty much why every single event ever happened on Azeroth. We've been living on the target planet for the most powerful beings in the universe, and just like Azeroth, we've been subject to their invasions. Once the World Soul goes away, we might finally remove the target from our back, and that will lead us to a completely different Azeroth. However, here is a very important point that might lead us to what happens in the storyline. Did you notice that every time we had seen the World Soul doing something, it had something to do with cleansing? First it was the Azerite going crazy from the wound, then purging N'Zoth and replacing the Titan powers from the aspects with their own, now cleansing Magni. It really seems like Azeroth is constantly trying to shake off these invader forces off her back. The real question though is that we can't really answer. What is the natural progression for Azeroth? Is it even a sentient being or simply just a source of power? It's certain that some Void beings and pretty much all the Titans are just converted former World Souls, but what does a natural World Soul look like? Is a World Soul even supposed to awaken, or does it just remain? And if it does awaken, what is it supposed to awaken as? Could it be related to the first ones? What I previously mentioned was that there could definitely be a Titan present, so the awakening might not happen until the Titans return. Like Xal'atath succeeds, but she can't progress because the Titans definitely saw this coming. They trapped Azeroth inside of a giant prison. The Void starts breaking the prison, and then the Titans come in. The Titan coming is definitely confirmed. We know that will happen in the last Titan. I could totally see a scenario where Azeroth isn't actually twisted by any of these forces, but instead we just end up beating them back with her help. We free Azeroth, but then what happens after is uncertain. I'm almost certain the awakening won't break the planet, but what Azeroth will actually turn into by its own natural progression is still a mystery. Thank you for watching. Check out the Mad Nerubian Queen that is returning by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Perun and Slavic mythology by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!